Hello and welcome to hashtag Badge Chat, no longer Badge Chat K-12, now Badge Chat, newly minted name for our first show and tell of hashtag Badge Chat since we changed the name. And we are joined this afternoon by Alec Barron. Alec, thank you so much for being with us.
It's great to be here.
And Alec, before we dive into the really exciting stuff that you prepared for us with the kind of next level phase of the work that's coming out of Lago Academy and Competency X, maybe you could just give folks who are new to the story a little bit of background on just how you got to where you are.
It's a long story of being interested and nerdy about science, actually. I got to start with being really geeky on science because I began my career as a science teacher, and I continue to be a science teacher. So for me, my passion is exciting kids about learning science and then supporting them with being able to be scientists in their own lives and to help inform decisions that they make in their personal and in their public lives. Which is a very important in our school district. I work in Escondido Union High School District. I'm a science TOSA, which is a teacher on special assignment, which means I wear a ton of different hats, but the bulk of them being instructional coaching and curriculum and professional learning. In addition to that, I'm the project lead for Competency X, which is a project supported by the Assessment for Learning project. And we are beginning our phase 2 work, which is what I'm excited to talk about today.
And for anybody who's interested in hearing about the phase 1 work, we have a whole episode that we did on that maybe 6 months ago with Alec's colleagues, Carissa and
Mark.
Thank you. I totally drew a blank there. Thanks for jumping in, Alec. But it's just sort of high-level 30-second version, just for anybody who, before we dive into hearing about phase 2, what's kind of the need to know about the phase 1 work that y'all have already launched?
All right, so Lago Academy is a public school, not charter, school of choice, and it's a biotechnology program, and all of our students, which we call scholars, because they have an active approach to their learning, do an internship in their 11th grade year, and many of them are science-based. And our concern was that our scholars were not successfully transferring skills with inquiry and science classroom to the science laboratory of their internships in the world of work. So what we did is we sat down with industry professionals and college professionals, and we mapped out what the skills were that are needed for success, the skills, knowledge, and dispositions. We built digital badges as mile markers for learning progressions on how kids build those skills, knowledge, and dispositions. And they're all integrated together. So we have a portfolio of digital badges that kids earn, and they curate artifacts in the digital portfolio. And then when they've met the criteria for earning the digital badge, it is validated either by a teacher, mentor, and they are awarded the badge. And they use that to earn internships and other workforce learning opportunities. Another dimension to the work, which I'll talk more about in phase 2, is going deeper and having more intentional skill development with internships. And that work began in phase 1 as an idea and then is continuing in phase 2 and in a larger scale, which involves kids building digital badges with their internship mentor to better define success.
Awesome. And for those of you who are watching us live, you are with @Alec Barron, and I'm Noah Geisel. And if you have any questions, feel free to tweet us. I'm checking the hashtag badge chat. So feel free to ask your questions. We'll get them to Alec live on the air. So Alec, thank you for that kind of quick overview of the awesomeness that's already been happening. I think one of the major takeaways for me from it has been how, you know, your scholars have the opportunity to really co-design with these industry professionals on, you know, what are the competencies that really matter and how do we then credential those. And that sort of student-led design, I think, has been just really one of the neat things for me to watch from afar.
Oh yeah, it's been awesome because we have kids doing internships that are not just science-based. A good example is one with Charlie's class of cooking. And you think, oh, you're learning how to cook, but who knew that the scholars that do that internship learn how to run a full-fledged business and then really go deep with skill sets involved in running that business. And I wouldn't be able to tell you what they are because I've never run my own business. I've been a teacher my whole career. So how do we better communicate and transparently communicate what those skills are needed for success in the world of work. And for us, it's the student conversations with the mentor that derives those very context-specific skills or competencies to recognize and then have validated by the work that they do with their mentor, and have them sign off and say that they really represent success.
So cool. And you know, Alec, as we think about the next phase, this phase 2, from what you've shared with me about it off camera, is for me kind of the big tagline buzz that should be getting hopefully everybody really excited about this, is that you're working hand in hand with industry as well as higher ed to open up real experiential opportunities for learning for students, as well as access to college credit. And so, you know, I'll let you figure out what the good starting point is there for our live and delayed viewers, but you know, that's what I know people are really excited about.
Well, this story begins in terms of our phase 2 work involving college articulation with an amazing program that has been running for a very long time here in San Diego County, formerly called the Life Science Summer Institute, now rebranded as the Amgen Biotechnology Experience. And that's run out of the Southern California Biotechnology Center, which is supported from the San Diego Miramar Community College. And what that program has done is it's put into the hands of biology teachers throughout our county the capacity, not just in knowledge of how to implement in their classroom, but the actual physical resources to pull off a biotechnology curricular unit in their biology course. And we are a biotechnology hub in San Diego County, and it's really empowering biology teachers to actually let their students be scientists in the classroom and experience what the world of biotechnology is. And that program has really gained an enormous access for kids across the county to the biotechnology skills that are needed for success along academic paths. So for us, one of the things that we started conversations with them about is the need to really build those articulations based on performance. And what we mean by that, it's not just reflecting on what you know, it's actually showing what you know. So many of the skill sets that, or I should say, let's call them competencies that are required for success for this college articulation that exists through these learning experiences, are things like gel electrophoresis, pipetting, and running an ELISA. So if you could actually have the kids do micropipetting and do gel electrophoresis and have someone actually notice and recognize them for demonstrating those skill sets, it's sort of like we're trying to build the driver's test of biotechnology, not just the paper test. And then can that lead to the college credit? Because we have an enormous amount of scholars and students throughout the county, and they're all scholars because they're all accessing this curricular experience, but we're not recognizing them for the performances that matter, that really build the skill sets that are part of this college articulation, which are these very bench scientist skill sets. So what we're doing is we are building digital badges with Miramar College faculty, San Diego Miramar Community College faculty. And what these digital badges map out are those performances required for the college articulation. So what this means is that we could, and we're piloting a part of this, replace aspects of the traditional articulation process with performance-based assessment as recognized by digital badges.
And we do have a question coming to us from all the way from Canada, from Don Prezani. He wants to know, are the Competency X badges open badges?
The Competency X badges are open badges, but we have not finished them for releasing them for use yet. That actually, I do have a date for everyone. That's going to be in the new year. So right now, you can access aspects of the badges at competencyx.com. You can access them. But we have had teachers, and I could tell the story of how we have iteratively shaped these assessments based on feedback from our industry partners and then scholars themselves that led the program evaluation of phase 1 of Competency X. So it's interesting to see how what we've asked for as evidence has shifted based on when we examine student work and then learn about what aspects of the design of those badges are working and not working. But yes, we have a date in January. I'm proud to announce we will be opening those badges for everyone to be able to use.
Awesome. And, I think that, and again, for anybody who's watching us live, you can tweet questions into #badge chat, and we'll get those questions live on the air to Alec. And, I think for anybody who's watching this live or even the tape delay on YouTube catching this, the piece where you really hit on there is kind of just central to why there's even excitement for digital badge credentials at all, and that's the performance base, that because you're attached to this evidence, it goes beyond just something that would be, assessed via multiple choice. And so another thing that you said that really resonates with me is access, and that that we're really looking at an equity thing. And so for folks who are wondering, wow, you guys got dialed in with Miramar College, and how do those conversations start? And one of the things I heard you saying is that you were synthesizing with long-standing existing work, so you weren't really asking on their side to do anything that new or unfamiliar. Is that accurate?
Yes, and we built off of their desire for a competency-based approach for articulation. So with our work on Competency X, it provided a process by which they could actually achieve their interests in having a more performance-based approach to how they do an articulation. Now, if you don't mind, let's take a step back and talk about the equity issue here. So too often, and this is in our region, so I can't speak to everywhere, we focus exclusively on the input, not the output of learning. What I mean by that is that articulation agreements are often built on the instructor, not what kids are able to show they know. So what that unfortunately does is, in terms of creating a barrier, is only kids who have access to that trained educator can access those wonderful opportunities for college credit. So how do we broaden access? By not only training teachers more effectively to be able to deliver the learning experiences needed to validate the learning for these articulations, but how do we take a competency-based approach that says, look, it doesn't have to do with just this one class. Series of classes where you are being recognized for your competencies that you've built or demonstrated across those courses, that ultimately results in a college articulation, not a single time-bound single-year course. It could be broadened to multiple years. So for us at Lago, a good example of this is that the college articulation that we would ideally like to map to is kids might be ready for the articulation at 10. Grade 10, not just grade 11. And some kids might take grade 10, 11, and 12. And then eventually they're demonstrating competency by the end of grade 12. Then they can challenge for the college articulation through a transcription event. So that's our approach. And that's how we view us enabling with this process in our phase 2. We're broadening access. So it's not just Lago Academy scholars, but it's kids throughout our entire school district and then throughout our county that could possibly have access to this.
And that equity thing just really I really am just right there with you on that one. And one of the things I'm really curious about is, as you've gone down this road of working with Miramar College and having these, articulation agreements in place, one of the things that it seems like was really also a driver for you that made the road a lot easier was having industry buy-in and industry input along the way. So can you kind of speak to the sort of role that industry groups have played on this?
Yeah, so for us in phase 1, we went out, we knew folks from our internships, and we tapped them individually from the biotechnology industry to help us build our phase 1 digital badges. For phase 2, we learned that what connects all of those biotechnology companies together is Biocom, which is the association here in our region. And then actually they have offices throughout our country that support the biotechnology industry. So we actually partnered with Biocom directly. And I'd love it if we could tag them in one of these tweets here. But Biocom is really is the one that's going to be helping us broaden access and showing that these digital badges have currency and are credible competencies that can be used to broaden access to workforce learning opportunities, things like apprenticeships and internships. So our focus is on internships. We have a number of, the pool of internships, yes, is finite, but we haven't even broadened access to all the possible internships that are there within the industry. And we know that it's this work-based learning, the identity of our learners, that enables them to continue on their journey, learning and building the skills necessary for success in the future.
And we do have another question from one of our live viewers here about the college articulation agreements from both Teresa Gross and also Don Prasad had a question about that. For anybody who's not familiar with college articulation, is that the same thing as just college credit versus dual credit? Can you just kind of give a little bit of an explainer there?
Well, it's different depending on the state. And I know this because I've worked in Colorado and I've worked in California. For us in our region, there's a couple of different paths for college credit. The big ones that are the most guaranteed are articulation, enrollment. Dual enrollment credits mean that you have actual college faculty that play a role in delivering the learning experiences for students that results in college credit that's transferable. For articulation, there's a great amount of variance depending on community college and then high school faculty. So I've seen it vary to the point where articulation is literally just looking at this syllabus and looking at that syllabus and going, up, close enough. And then what that means is that if a kid enrolls in that community college, they can get the college credit. So then the college credit, depending on what that college credit, could be transferable to other institutions. We do have this equity issue of not having transferable credit for very key classes, things like calculus, some of our introductory science classes, and writing classes. So for us, we'd like to see a more unified approach to how college credit is awarded and then transferred and then used. This is an area where digital badges, I think, has a huge amount of value. And that's why our pilot work with San Diego Miramar College is interesting. So we could show the promise, possibly, of digital badges, making it easier for kids to take recognition for their learning experiences with them and then add to them over time. And that's the thing that we would like to see happen, as opposed to credits that just kind of disappear into transcripts. You're more than your transcript and the grades. And hopefully the whole depth of the learning experiences that result in the college credit are captured through all of the metadata within open badges.
Totally. And I think, for anybody who didn't just joined us and didn't catch your earlier explanation on the equity front, where, talking about in education, we value the inputs, which are, the teacher-driven stuff versus the outputs, that one of the kind of pressing issues, at least in our community out here in Colorado, is, a lot of these dual enrollment classes, like you mentioned, requires that the high school teacher is also a college faculty. They're essentially teaching it on the high school campus as an adjunct. And that, a lot of times you have a teacher who is perfectly content expertise-wise qualified to teach the class, however, does not have the credentials to actually be able to be, college faculty. And so all of a sudden her students are not eligible for that dual enrollment credit, whereas somebody down the hallway taking the exact same class, just because their teacher does have those credentials, is eligible to get that dual enrollment credit. And I don't know if the Colorado situation speaks to kind of what you were alluding to there for California.
Yeah, in Colorado, it's framed as concurrent enrollment. In California, we call that process dual enrollment. But it's the same equity issue, and that's certainly the case. And I experienced that as a teacher out in Colorado, and I was a proud teacher in Aurora Public Schools at Rangeview High School. So yeah, I certainly saw that at play within our science department, where kids who had access to a particular class and teacher could then access that college credit in a more accessible fashion. And then a lot of those agreements, they did vary, and they vary even more in the state that I work in. So there's a diverse amount of agreements. It's tough to say they're all the same.
Totally. And I guess another one is an organization I know you spoke with just last week, Mouse, out in New York City, where they're doing after school STEM programming, credentialing it, and they have a University Parsons School of Design where they are, did I get that right? It's Parsons School of Design, is that?
Parsons. I'm a little fuzzy on that as well. That's a Google search away. Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize, Parsons folks, if I'm getting it right. A very prestigious art and design school, and the articulation agreement there is not so much that they are receiving college credit. It's more that in the admissions office they are looking for these digital badge credentials. That Parsons recognizes them, values them, and the articulation agreement is more about on the admissions side that they'll actually kind of have a way to give preferential admissions treatment to students who have those digital badge credentials. And, and so speaking of that, going back to phase 2 of your work, when we think of these, articulation agreements, it gets at the whole value proposition, right? And for the student in, your school district who raises their hand and says, Mr. Alec, why should I care about this? What is the value proposition in your system beyond just the college credit?
Beyond the college credit, which really engages, hang on a second, deal with some lighting issues, really supports us. The kids get really excited anytime you say this is college learning because they often don't recognize it as such. They're like, wait, what? And especially when you have those relationships with educators and mentors. Now, beyond that, our kids are most excited at the Lago Academy when they're in internships. And the promise for accessing the internships is enormous, even when they're unpaid, and all of ours are unpaid. Ours are excited because they see that as really the purpose behind much of the learning that they do in school. And they want a chance to see what particular industries are like. And the only way to experience those that world of work is to be in the world of work. So how do you, push out onto the system and say, hey, I want those opportunities? More important, how does the system poke back at you and say, hey, I need someone that has this skill, has demonstrated this in multiple contexts. How do they find that talent? How do we have a dynamic talent marketplace where we can communicate and then get kids to access those opportunities? A good example, and this one I'm proud of saying, from one of our biotechnology companies that supported us in phase 1, just recently hired a high school kid to teach one of their employees a particular coding language. How did they find that high school kid? Well, it's who they knew. How could we have a system in which they could say, I need someone who's taught others, that has experience teaching, from high school level, either in tutoring. That's a good example of one. 2, public speaking. 3, I want them to know how to code in this particular language. How can you dial that in and then recruit prospective employees or interns to fill those needs? Especially in our innovation economy, where we're looking at small startups that can't tap really expensive employees to do those types of jobs. This is a really good opportunity for entry-level employees and interns. And how do we increase that access? And that right there, if you have that conversation with a high school student, they're going to geek out on that because they're like, wait, what? Wait, I can get a job? And we've had students from their internships translate those into jobs their senior year that they work at and then continue to work at as they're enrolled in a 4-year university. And that's been really exciting.
And I don't think that we can really overstate our excitement here on this equity angle when it comes to accessing things like internships in these, really exciting innovation economy, white collar job spaces where, like you said, the first question somebody says is, does anybody know anybody who fill in the blank, right? And when it's everybody who is kind of the same saying, does anybody know anybody, then who they know is also the same. And that's where our underserved populations are just kind of never brought into these conversations and never offered these opportunities for which they are really qualified. And would you mind sharing the story that you told me about the student who just on the resume, it wasn't telling the full story. But then when HR found out the full story, she was like, yes. Will you share that story with anybody who's watching live? And then after Alec's done, we might have time for one more question. Feel free to tweet us in at hashtag badge chat.
I'll show the resume. I think I can do that. I'm going to share my screen really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Happen. Oh, let's pick this one right here. Share. All right. So what we're looking at is the scholar's resume that we're talking about. I've recently merged this into my regular slide deck because this was powerful. And it's actually not a bad, this isn't just an excerpt of his resume, but it's not a bad resume. It looks like a very impressive student. Not say anything about the inspirational speech that he gave to all 10th graders that he had in the auditorium and had them gripped, and they all cited as a reason why they doubled their efforts on competencies in their courses. It doesn't show that he led a team of freshmen as a sophomore safely construct the scaffolding for our theater program. It doesn't say those things, and it does not capture the character that he possesses and has demonstrated time and time again. I shared this with the head of human resources for one of the folks that we work with, and they were really impressed with all the other aspects of who he is. How do we take those things, those experiences, have them validated by a mentor? And this is just a simple 2D paper validation form that we created. And then that validation form translates into a digital badge that then has currency that can advance the student's goals for reaching an internship or accessing college.
I just love that story so much. And, we do have a couple minutes left of your time. Was there anything else that it looked like you might have had some stuff prepared that you wanted to share with us? Is there any visuals that you wanted to match our words there?
Is my screen still being shared? I don't even know.
It is not. You'll have to click to share your screen.
Do that real quick. So I'm going to pop back, and you can find phase one's project information here at competencyx.com. And come January, we are going to take all the badges that were built in analyzing and communicating domains. And then you'll be able to see exemplars from the badges and what it takes for kids to earn them. And yes, they are open badges. And then we have a digital badge showcase, which shows an exemplar of how a scholar actually earned the digital badge with the artifacts that they curated in their digital portfolio for this visual explanation badge. In addition to that, we are going to be launching, but you can visit the early version of the website, the San Diego Digital Badge Alliance, sdbadgealliance.org. And at that site, we are really with a variety of partners so that we can broaden access to college, career, and civic opportunities through the use of digital badges. And we're bringing together practitioners to share work and really create synergies in our region. One of the things that's on there early as badge ecosystem supports, and this is a huge shout out to my colleagues Carissa Duran and Becky McKinney, badge tools for building digital badges like the ones that we use for Competency X, and then also student created badges for internships to dig deeper into intentional skill development. Just to highlight a few of the awesome ones that we have here. We have a draft of a badge validation checklist that we're working with the Center for Collaborative Education to build so that we can say these badges are good badges, as I've often heard at conferences. And then a scholar internship badge planning tool. How do you support them with designing their own digital badge to dive deeper into their internship and then map out those skills that are needed for success? And then just a beautiful infographic created by Carissa Duran with feedback from scholars on what aspects they should consider when designing their own digital badge. And all of this work currently you can find at sdbadgealliance.org. And yeah, that's about it for now, but we're going to be sharing a ton as the next couple months move forward. We're excited to get rocking and rolling, and you'll see a lot shared with us or from us on phase two.
I, for one, am super mega mooey excited about everything that y'all did with phase one, and I think that you're just hitting home runs all over the place, Alec, with phase two. And I can't thank you enough for taking half an hour out of your busy Monday afternoon to share with our community where this work came from, where it is, and where it's heading, because I think there's just so much happening there in your community that everybody else out here is going to be able to beg, borrow, and steal from. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
And you can follow him on Twitter. He is at Alec, A-L-E-C, Barron with 2 R's. And my name is Noah, guys. I'm at Senior G on Twitter. And thank you all so much who are watching live. If you are tuning in on tape delay on YouTube, thank you for taking the time. We do this every Monday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We alternate between Twitter and YouTube. And if you are somebody have amazing work that needs to be shared here on our YouTube Hangout, please reach out, let us know. I'm at Senior G. And also, everybody, please know that the Badge Summit is happening again June 23rd in Chicago. You can get the latest at badgesummit.weebly.com. And by the latest, I mean it'll be updated real soon, because right now it's not yet updated. But that's coming up June 23rd, 2018 in Chicago. And if you have amazing work or know of amazing work that needs to be shared, please let us and our curators know. We'd love to give them a platform to share it with a broader audience. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Alec, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.